What happened next is difficult to say. A dark spot in the belly of the luminous being appeared and started to grow. It appeared to Jack to be a long hallway opening up. The being's outline was getting blurry. Another figure appeared down the long hallway. It was dancing and coming closer. A black and white striped figure wearing a mask. The dance seemed to be an ancient dance of traditions long past. As the figure got closer, it seemed to be mocking Jack. He recognized it as the Hayoka, the tattoo from Sujin's arm. Any elation Jack had felt ran right out of him and was replaced with a sharp shock of anger and despair. He felt like a grand cosmic joke had been played on him. Jack jumped up. "Hey!" he shouted, pointing at the figure. "You're not the one! Who do you think you are?" He turned to the hooded monks. "He's not the one!" But Jack wasn't addressing the monks. He was addressing a normal congregation. Men in suits, women in flowered dresses and large decorative hats, children cleaned up in their best clothes all stared at him in silent amazement. Jack looked up to see where he was pointing. A speechless minister stared from the pulpit. Jack stuttered as his voice echoed through the silent church. "I followed a cat." Jack turned and fled out the church doors. "I'm not crazy," said Jack, storming down the street. He knew right where he was headed. He needed to get his bearings. Jack refused to believe that he had lost his mind. He rounded the corner and walked into the bar that he had passed on his first day in Channing Falls. Jack stormed up to the bar stool and without looking ordered 5 shots of whiskey. "Set him up," ordered Jack, and he slapped his cash down on the bar. One by one he went. After the third, he took a breath and looked at the bartender, an old bald man with his hair combed back in a ponytail. The man kept a well-trimmed, long beard. "Don't I know you?" asked Jack. "No, sir. Not to my knowledge," said the man. You were the guy that jumped down the storm drain." The man didn't show any recollection of the event. Instead, he got a hard look in his eyes and crossed his arms in a bartender language as if to say, "Are we going to have a problem here?" Jack lowered his eyes. "Sorry, pal. My mistake," and went back to the task at hand. "I have to stay calm and figure this one out," thought Jack. The bartender walked away to the back room. "This is ridiculous," Jack thought. "What's the deal with this godforsaken place?
This has got to be the work of my parole officer. I mean, who else could it be? The government? No, I'm really sounding paranoid. I don't know, it's this
place.
Yes, like there's something in the water.
Or the air.
And it's making me crazy, just paranoid.
Like it's some sort of dream.
And what does it mean?
And who's controlling it?
And what do they want? I know this sounds crazy, but is this a test? I have this sneaking suspicion that I'm supposed to figure something out.
Get to the bottom of it. Like I'm meant to be here. Like my actions and choices are leading me somewhere.
Or to someone.
Jack just realized 2 things. 1, this whole time he was talking aloud. And 2, he was sharing the conversation with a woman sitting next to him. They looked up at each other, equally surprised. She was beautiful in a way that Jack couldn't qualify. She looked ragged in a way, bags under her bright eyes, disheveled and anxious. He could tell that she was being tormented by this town as well. The look was unmistakable, and he saw in her maybe the only person who could understand what he was going through. A kindred spirit. "Someone," Jack said. "Someone," the girl replied. "Are you stuck here?" asked Jack. "Mm-hmm," she said. "Should we get out of here?" "Yes," said Jack. "Let's go," she said. The two grabbed hands and headed out the door. They could barely keep their eyes off each other. "Julie," she said. "I'm Jack," he replied. There was a tangible, unspoken connection between the two. They headed to her apartment. That night, they lay down together. They talked, they commiserated, they shared, they loved, and they lay next to one another, looking deep into each other's eyes. Time flew by. It was late in the next afternoon when Jack finally realized that he was supposed to work that day. "What was I thinking?" said Jack. "Come with me to work. I want you to meet Paul." Julie agreed, and they headed out, holding hands. While they walked, Jack grew excited. There was so much he wanted to tell Paul. Jack understood now. This was the reason why he came here, to meet her. That's why Mr. Lyons laughed when Jack asked, "Who is he?" It wasn't he, it was she. And that's why they called her the One. Because when man and woman truly join, mind, body, and spirit, they become one. Jack didn't know what crazy witchcraft they used to make this happen, and he didn't care anymore. He just cared that it happened. He couldn't wait to tell Paul. Jack saw Paul from across the street, sweeping the front steps of the diner. Jack waved him down and crossed the street, hand in hand with Julie. Paul looked up at them with a quizzical look on his face and stopped sweeping. Jack thought he heard his shoes squeak when he stepped up on the curb. I'm sorry I didn't come into work. I'll make up for it, I promise, Jack explained. But I have a good reason. Paul put his hands on top of the broom. Another squeak. The one, Jack said. Pretty clever. Look, I don't know if you had anything to do with it, but thank you. Squeak. You're welcome, said Paul. What are you talking about? Squeak. I found her, Paul. I found her, and I've never been happier. All this craziness, but it was worth it. Squeak. Jack was having a hard time concentrating with that squeak noise. What was it? It sounded like rubber on rubber, or like squishing a balloon. His palm was sweaty. I found her, and I don't know how else to say it, but a soulmate. Paul had the same confused look on his face, and then he smiled and laughed out loud. Whatever you say, Jack. Whatever you say, said Paul, and he went back to sweeping. Jack was a bit affronted. Paul's response wasn't what he had hoped. What was wrong with Paul? And why did Jack's hand feel so sweaty? And what the heck was that squeaking? Jack turned to Julie to see that she wasn't there at all. He was holding the hand of a blow-up doll. Jack stormed down the street. He was done with this. It was time to get some real answers. If someone was trying to drive him crazy, he'd show them crazy. He ran up the stairs to his parole officer's office and threw the door wide open. "Where is he?" he shouted. The receptionist stood up. "Sir, he can't see you now," she said, stepping in front of the office door. Jack walked up and easily pushed her aside with one arm and kicked the door open. He rushed in and looked around the room. Empty. The curtains blew in from an open window. Jack ran to the window and looked out just in time to see a figure running around the corner. Jack jumped after him down the fire escape. Just as Jack was about to turn the corner, he heard glass shattering. When he got around, there was no one, but he saw about a block up that the hardware store's glass door had been knocked in. Jack didn't break stride, and he went right for it. He climbed through the broken glass and took a few steps in.